Internets and internets. Don't go out at night. I don't know why you can't go out at night. But we have the Beast with us today. Well, that's not the Beast. No, but I thought about the Beast, and this seems very Beast-like, so I thought I'd show this off real quick. What other Beast do we have? This Beast. The Christopher Elliott Beast Spinner. So, let's take a look at this guy, shall we? So this is going to be a little different, kind of an interesting one here. This is obviously, maybe not obviously, it will be obvious, and if most of you that have seen this maybe know, this is not something that you can get. This is something that back when I really started getting into spinners and was really kind of trolling around the all the different Facebook groups, old Christopher Elliott was 3D printing this big bad boy, and you know, seeing little pictures of it online, you don't really get a sense of scale. And then he talked about wanting to get it machined, so fast forward a few weeks, a few months, he looks at getting some prototypes done and some stuff set up, and then went to launch a Kickstarter, and sadly, the Kickstarter did not get funded, and it's a shame because this was really affordable. It really was an affordable spinner, and you know, I think it was like 35, 40 bucks for this in brass, and you probably can tell, but there's a reason that this is called the Beast. Now, I should say that depending on how you're trying to fidget with it, these buttons are pretty much just a no-go. They're not tall enough to do table spins. They're very little. They don't offer a lot of grip. And I don't know if these really would have been the buttons that would have stayed on it if it really got into production, but I mean, they're not really any different than... so these are like the buttons that come on the Zentrei, right? Like they're just small little buttons. But look at the size of the spinner. Oh, do I have my calipers? Hold on, I do have my calipers. All right, let's turn these on. Inches. Oh, we knocked over the Beast. The Chaos Spawn of Nurgle. Three and a quarter inches, essentially, internet. By 1.6 inches, so a little over an inch and a half. Look at the thickness of these weights. 6, yeah, 2/3. So really big guy. Turn that off. And let's weigh it too, because that's going to come into play here. Because it is a beast. There's a reason it's called a beast. $137 grams. Can you imagine this thing in tungsten? It'd be like 400 grams. Almost 5 ounces. It's a little more than a quarter pounder. A Royale with cheese. What's that movie from? Don't even comment below. If you don't know what that movie was from, immediately, we're not friends, unsubscribe. That's a little harsh, especially for maybe some of the younger crowd. And especially since I try to be kind of friendly, that's definitely not a friendly movie. So anyway, let's look at the spinner. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take Fabian's advice. If you guys don't know, Fabian, he knows a thing or two about a thing or two. So when he says something, we listen. But yeah, these buttons just aren't going to cut it. Just not going to cut it. So let's really appreciate this spinner the way it should be appreciated. With some Hydra buttons on everything, y'all. So these are the buttons Fabian put on it, and I just love putting Hydra buttons on everything anyway, so I probably would have. I probably didn't need his advice to do that, but... Oh, there we go. Now we're talking. Now we've got something going here. So this is a really cool spinner. Now, when I first picked it up out of the box, I tried to spin it like I spin every other spinner. And you know what? It didn't really work. If you guys remember me talking about that Van Pelt, what happens with this guy... And especially with as heavy as it is and with all the weight that it's got going on here, it's got, you know, like these big old raised weights. You really have to reach out far to do a preloaded flick. I mean, like, I got big hands, y'all, and I got to reach out there. And because I have to reach out so far, see like where this finger is underneath here? By the time I flick this down, like I'm reaching out so far with this finger, it gets pushed into this one. So it's very difficult to then get my finger out of the way in time to not bump into my finger with it. So I try to do preloaded flicks, and I'm like, this thing just really doesn't work. It just really wasn't doing it for me. I just hit my, oops, I hit the camera stand. I hit my finger nearly every time I tried to preload spin it. And then something just happened. I just stopped thinking about it, and I just spun the spinner. And let me tell you, this right here does not look like it would give the amazing leverage that it does, but this is so satisfying to spin because you've got all this weight and you get just tremendous leverage. You know, like if you leverage Archimedes, if you try to, there's something satisfying about like pushing open a door, like with your hand in the middle of the door instead of the end of the door, right? So you can really kind of feel the leverage, right? You're kind of pushing against the pivot point. What's the fulcrum? Is that the word I'm looking for? Anyway, but yeah, so like you can really catch and you can really pull off here, and then all of a sudden your finger is much closer to where you would expect on like a more traditional type spinner, right? Like if I'm doing a flick on the inside of something like this, like, look at where I'm going to be doing a preloaded flick on this. I'm lining up like, can I just like, let's not move my fingers. Like we're right there. So it's not far off. So if I'm trying to reach out and do a preloaded flick on the end of the arms, it just doesn't work with this guy. But if I'm flicking on the inside, or especially pulling either off here, but even more so off this thing, so not here, but here, that is really satisfying. And flicking off of there, it actually is surprisingly fidgetable. Like it really works and it's fun. There's nothing like throwing that kind of weight around, and you've got these little, essentially these little levers, these almost like flippers, real close to the inside. Now I think if you're really trying to perfect this design, you want to swoop this out, get it almost more like a, what's a good example we got sitting around here? Something like this, where you've got essentially like a little hook. Like imagine this sort of a little hook right there. You could get some really satisfying pulls and fidgets off of here. So it's fun to fidget with at that size, at that weight. Being that it's so large, you really need to be reaching into the inside. Don't be trying to reach out and catch the outside of the arms, because you're not gonna have a good time. I got big hands and I can sort of manage it, but I know most people aren't gonna be able to manage it. But I think we really kind of tangented off the whole Chris Elliott story. I don't know if I really told all that, but again, it was sad that the Kickstarter didn't get funded, and it was kind of cool to like see this whole progression of him like having his 3D printed giant spinner and then getting it made in stainless steel. And there was, I think, a handful of us that were really following it and really behind him and encouraging him. And I think the problem was he had a pretty high goal. Like it was a cheap spinner and a high goal. Like he needed something like 12 grand, but yet it was a $40 spinner. So like the number of backers that he really had to get in there, the spinner game was kind of going on and going off, and I was really hoping that we could see some more people get in on it, and it just kind of didn't get enough traction, which is sad. Because it would have been cool to have to the collection again, especially at that price point. But I think he's made like a smaller version as well. In fact, I know he's made a smaller version. I don't know the specifics of it, but yeah, this is things to kind of enjoy. Now, this is not an all-day spinner. This is hand fatigue. I mean, even in this 8-minute video, I can already feel my fingers starting to get a little fatigue from doing this, because again, it is a lot of spinner. It's a lot of, you really have to grab harder than you would just for the size of the spinner. So normally with something this weight, you still probably won't have to grab quite as hard as you do, because you really need to pull. There's a lot of leverage, a lot of resistance when you're pulling here and you're trying to move this weight so much farther off the center, right? You're not in an optimal physics, mechanical advantage type position to pull this, but it is a lot of fun to spin. No, spin time wise, I don't think I mentioned this was borrowed on loan from Horace. It'll say in the beginning of the video, but Horace sent me this. He asked me if I wanted to take a look at and review it, and I said absolutely. I was really hoping I would get a chance to spin this guy, because again, I was all for it in the Kickstarter when it happened. I think it was a Kickstarter. It might have been an Indiegogo. Pretty sure it was a Kickstarter. But yeah, so Horace has got one of these, and he offered to send it out to me. So big shout out to Horace for that. So. What was I saying before I started to say that? Oh yeah, so spin time. So it had I believe a hex super bearing in there. It's an R188 standard retention ring method, if we didn't really see that. So I threw one of my hex super bearings, or HC2s, the hybrid ceramics, without the rust coating in there, and I'm gonna put we'll do that right now. We'll put Horace's bearing back in there. And this one was, it hadn't been cleaned, so it can probably still get better spin time with these bearings. But again, these are like some of the best spin time bearings out there. And we managed to get 845 on a table spin and about 1040 something on a vertical spin. So that's pretty good spin time. So you're also dealing, again, it's very heavy, so you would expect some good spin times, but also, again, the old diminishing returns, the amount of, you know, leverage for as far out as those arms are, it's not optimized for spin time. It just happens to be a big old beast of a spinner, so it can spin rather well. So some nice little cutouts here in the middle to kind of reduce the weight in the middle and start pushing that out. Again, look at the size of those weights, brah. Do you even weights, brah? Like, this is the Get Swole spinner. Like, this spinner is eating its creatine. Or maybe you need to be eating your creatine if you're going to be spinning this kind of spinner. All its whey protein, this thing came to play. So here we've got a much smoother bearing now. Again, I'm pretty sure it's a super bearing. I can't be 100% sure. And I don't know what bearing would have come in it and if it came with that in it. But it looks and feels like a super bearing, so. Which most of you guys probably have. You should have. If you don't have hex super bearings, we don't even, same thing. Like, if you haven't seen Pulp Fiction and you don't have hex super bearings, you got to get on that internet. We got to talk about your life choices. Yeah, I don't know if there's really anything else to say on it. It's a shame it didn't get made into production, but it's kind of a very fun, unique spinner. It's not a practical spinner. It's not pocket friendly. It's not an all-day spinner, but there's something satisfying about pulling right here like this that you don't get from any other spinner. I don't know of any other spinner this big and this heavy. There are other big, heavy spinners, right? We got the old Peanut. Oh, look at it shine. Look at it shine. And this is fun to spin, but it's not the same. It's not the same sort of feedback that you get from this sort of thing. So I even have I don't have it with me. I wish I had that. The Brass Hammer by Dubel, which I've kind of customized, which gives you something a little similar, but again, it's not the same thing. There's just a very interesting, different feel to pulling against the leverage, but yet still getting a good spin. So, and it's a good finger workout. So you won't really see these. It's a shame that you can't really get them. So, you know, but it's still something I kind of wanted to show off. And you know me, I like some content on my channel. And hey, maybe this is I get comments from time to time where people are like, damn it, Tim, now I got to buy this spinner. Well, hey, guess what? Now you got some Hobby Timmy content and you don't have to buy a spinner. So thank you, Chris Elliott. Thank you, Horace. Thank you, internets. And yeah, peace out and kisses. Kisses, internets. Boy, I got to hold it back to keep it all in frame. I'm not used to having my finger this far back. Slow it down. Slow it down. Kisses.